have an active shooter. We have an active shooter.
Let's go ahead and declare this a mass casualty.
Welcome to Active Shooter, a podcast that covers the whys, the hows, and the aftermath of active shooter and mass casualty events.
They have an active shooter in the building. A second call says they are being attacked.
I've been shot. 16910 means we got shots fired. 4:15 at Route 291. Sounded like an automatic firearm.
Active shooter, reports of an active shooter
of mass casualty incidents.
Thank you for listening.
You are listening to Active Shooter, a podcast that may contain adult themes, explicit language, and graphic depictions of violence. Portions of this show may be traumatic for those under 18. Listener discretion is advised.
We used to go in there and do building clearancing practices with it, so I've got a real intimate relationship with that building. And that night that it happened, and after that I just have no desire to be back over there. Not that I'm trying to block it or anything, I just don't see the point. I just don't want to go back down there.
Seemed like 5 years?
No. Some days it seems like it was just a few days ago.
I saw a lot of faces in there when we were all here, and everyone kind of was looking down. It almost seemed like some of those images were starting to come back.
Yeah, they do. I mean, I don't think they ever left me. I think certain triggers like conversations or people asking, or you might see something on the news, and like I say, I drive by there all the time because that's in my patrol beat, and I'm like...
You're first in?
First in.
First officer in?
Yes.
How soon after the shooting do you think you figure you were in?
He was still shooting when I was standing at the door.
Could you hear it?
Yes. And actually, I go back and forth. The more I think about it over the years, I thought it was just a movie. But now that I talked to other people, I could still hear the gunfire when I got to the door.
At what point did you realize this isn't going to be a routine call?
Well, when I rolled up, there was people carrying each other out. I mean, and dragging people out, wounded people. They were self-evacuating. And immediately I knew it was an active shooter. So I went to the place where, Theater 9, where it was happening. And I had my gun out, and I was standing outside the door. And just then the door burst open, and there was three kids two carrying one that was shot in the leg out. And then that's when I can hear the gunfire still inside. And they're telling me he's inside shooting.
Do you go into police mode at that point?
I'm trying to weigh my options here. I know that it's going on right now. I'm just waiting for some other people to show up so we can actually go in and make entry. And I'm telling you, felt like hours before the first officer arrived, but it was only seconds. They got there so fast.
What makes a police officer go into a room where there's an active shooter going on and people are being carried out, bloodied and injured? What makes you do that? You know,
I kind of asked the fire guys the same question. Why are you guys going to burning buildings? That's kind of stupid. You know, why would you guys ever do that? And they go, that's what we do. And I think, yeah, that's what we do. That's what you signed up for. That's what you're trained to do. And that's why you go in. When you know it's going to be bad. You know it's something really, really bad just happened, and you know something really bad's going to happen again.
You worried about yourself?
No. I think...
What caused... I mean, I bet you I'm going to ask that question of everybody, and everyone's going to say the same thing. What causes that?
And I think it's just... You realize this is your job. I mean, you realize just like when you go on your first burglary call and you're by yourself and you got to go in there and search the building. I mean, somebody broke in there, you got to go in and look. I mean, you have to. No one else is going to do it. And when you're standing outside that door and the shooting's going on, there's no one else got to come. You're it. There's no one to call. There's no one going to show up. There's no one going to take your place. If you don't do it, no one else will. So, I mean, that's what we do.
I'm not gonna have you relive everything you saw in there, but I do want to ask you. You went around and checked on folks.
Yes.
Why'd you do that?
I had to know. I wasn't going to leave anybody. I wasn't going to leave anybody there. And I knew we were going to have to. Just when if you had first walked in there and saw everybody, you knew that there were going to be people that were not going to ever leave that building. But I had to know for my own peace of mind that I wasn't going to leave somebody there that had a chance to be saved.
So what'd you do?
When after we evacuated everybody out, I was still I was the team leader. I was the team leader of the entry team. And I went and I physically checked on everybody that was still left. And I physically checked them, and that wasn't good enough. So I went out and grabbed one of the Aurora paramedics, and another paramedic came in. And I made them go. I made them check them. And they confirmed what we already knew. But I just had to know.
Why?
Because I wasn't going to leave anybody, we weren't going to leave anybody behind.
That's instinctual?
I don't know. I just felt that we were there to save people. We were there to make sure everyone got out. And I don't think as a group, we weren't going to leave anybody behind that still had a chance.
You guys still think about the people who didn't make it out?
Yes.
What do you think 5 years later?
You know, you kick yourself. I mean, I know talking with the other guys, I mean, could I got there sooner? Could I got there faster? Could I have done this? Could I have done that? What if I could have done this? And then, of course, then you talk to the doctors and you talk to the professional people. That was over. It was over before you got there. I mean, everything happened. You couldn't have done anything further. But I think because of our such devotion to our trade, that we don't accept that. We don't accept losses. I think each one of those gentlemen that are in that room with me would tell you, if we could have done something different, got there faster, or went into a different door, or did something, that's always plays in the back of our mind.
How different of a person are you today than the one that was on July 19th, the day before the shooting?
Well, I'll tell you, you go to some of these critical calls that we go to, and they're really not that big of a deal anymore. I mean, you got people shooting and car chasing and stuff like that, and you're like, it'll never raise to that level, and hopefully it'll never raise to that level again. So you're a lot calmer when you're dealing with people. You're a lot calmer when you're dealing with your calls. But you just see things different. I mean, you appreciate life differently. You look at things differently. And when you do go out on these calls, you handle people, you're like, you know what? Your life could change like tomorrow. I don't think you realize that. And you try to be more personal with your calls now, instead of just showing up and saying, all right, well, there's nothing I can do for you, move on. You're like, no, really, we can really do something more for you. You got to see this. I mean, there's people that never have this chance, would die for this opportunity.
More appreciative?
Exactly.
Are you?
I am. I think life is, you realize how life's short and how things could have been really differently even for us. I mean, if you look at some of the evidence, I think he would have made it out to the lobby. If he would have made it out to the lobby, that would have changed things for all of us, how things would have done. I mean, we had some luck involved there because of the way his gun malfunctioned. I think he was getting ready to walk out to the lobby. I think if he would have did that, it would have been a different outcome for us that were waiting outside the lobby to go in. I think if we got there, you just play these things in your mind all the time, and they kind of haunt you. If I would have got there, if I would have went to the left instead of to the right where he was, I would have confronted him. Instead of I went to the other side where he wasn't. So there's a lot of different things that go through your mind and haunt you.
Proud of what you guys did?
I'm proud of the officers that were there. I'm telling you, it was unbelievable. Like I told you earlier, it's like we did it every day. I mean, it was amazing watching everyone do what they do, and the officers making the decisions as fast as they can, and And when we made the decision and I knew we had to make the decision. And so when I made the decision to have everybody start evacuate people, because I knew the paramedics were going to come in, because we had that information there was still an active shooter. And I looked down and I saw John's guard down at the east entrance, and I knew we had control of that because I could see officers coming in. So my plan was to evacuate everybody to the east side of the movie theater so we can at least set up a triage. But that kind of fell through, and then somebody made us say, I think it was Lieutenant Redford, we're going to take people out on cars, and that's never been done before. We never practiced that. We never even talked about it. But yet these guys come up with these ideas so fast. I mean, we're moving. I mean, it's going fast. It's like a NASCAR race. I mean, cars are pulling up. We're picking people up. We're putting them in cars. The next car will pull up. We pick them up. I mean, I remember seeing the CSI van, which is the crime van. She'd show up, and she'd pull up her car, and we'd pull people in. They were gone. I mean, they were giving them direction, what hospitals to go to. I mean, it was like we did it every day.
You guys saved some lives that night.
We like to think so.
I think you chose it.
Well,
the evidence is showing that.
It was just, like I say, it was everyone that was there, it was just amazing. I mean, it's just like we did it every day. They did an outstanding job.
We live in an era where there's a lot of scrutiny when police officers do something wrong. But here's a story that's kind of waited 5 years to sort of percolate, and everyone's kind of heard a little bit about what you guys have done, but never really heard a lot of the full story because you guys, for a number of years, were never even really able to talk about it. But what do you want? What's the most important thing for me to say about what you and your other officers did that night that maybe needs to be in this story for sure?
And that's a tough question. I think that there was no one person that did anything there. I think it's all the training that the department provided for us. I mean, we did have some active training earlier, and then, it's just the day-to-day stuff out the department. I mean, it's just amazing what people don't realize is that we as a department contact hundreds of people a day. And 99.9% of those contacts are all positive, even when you arrest people. So we do this all the time anyway. I mean, now it just comes to focus now that because we have the movie theater, but these guys do that all the time. And I think this comes out is that these guys are top notch. I mean, they've done something no one else has ever done, and they did it without any type of that type of training that they've had, and it's just amazing. I'm proud to be part of that organization.
You still think about that night every day?
Almost, yeah.
Is it different now that when you think about it 5 years later?
No, I didn't even know it was 5 years until somebody told me. I didn't. It's just time goes by pretty quick. If he told me it happened last year, I think that I'd probably agree with you.
But the sights, the sounds, maybe the smells, pretty vivid still.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I can still picture that one little girl grabbing my pant leg. We were standing there, and she was crying, and she was shot, and we were just standing there looking around, and we're in that mode where we're looking for the shooter, and we have to move people and step over people, and I mean it's hard to do that, but your mission is you have to find the shooter because they're doing something, and I think that's real difficult for people to understand is that they think you're to get there and render aid immediately and start treating the injured, and that's not what we were there for first. We had to go through and look for the shooter, and that was difficult for us. I think a lot of us think we could have, and that's why we go back to the people that were down and that didn't make it out. I mean, should we have helped them right away? And speaking with the nursing staff and the doctor staff, there probably nothing we could have done because it was over when it happened. But those are the things you think about.
What do you think about Stephen Moten?
Who?
Stephen Moten. There's an individual who grabbed you and was underneath some bodies.
Oh, the last gentleman we pulled out?
Yeah.
How did you find him?
We were doing secondary clearing, or what we call just look and make sure that the shooter didn't secrete himself under other people. So we were moving people, bodies, and I found him underneath a body. And one of the other officers says, well, I don't think he made it. And I said, okay, so we're moving on. And I came back. I said, no, there's something about him. It doesn't feel right to me. So we picked him up, and then I could see that he was still alive. So we took him out, and he was one of the last people to leave. But we almost left him there behind.
Well, you said there was something about him. What was it?
I don't know. It's just, I don't know, because he looked like he was deceased. He did. He wasn't moving. He wasn't responding to anything we were doing, and I just picked him up, and I think one of the other officers, I can't even tell you who helped me. We drug him out and loaded him up, and that's the last I saw of him. Until I found out that he was at the hospital the next day.
You seen him since?
No.
Do you want to?
I don't know. I'm really ambivalent about that. Because, it's one of those feelings where you think if I would have got there faster, if I would have done something different.
But that's not true.
I know.
Is it, you guys were because of this criminal case, you guys were under a gag order for so long. Was that strange?
No, it's pretty typical. I've been in numerous critical incidents where we've been under the same gag order. But what's unique about this is that, because it was so close to us, what happened, so emotional, so much feeling was involved in, with dealing with all the injured parties and stuff. We had to talk to each other at least. It was not had to get our message out, but we just had to, for our own peace of mind, we wanted to talk to people. We wanted to. Every time I talk about this, I'm real ambivalent, because sometimes it kind of makes me feel worse, and sometimes it makes me feel better. And when I talk to the other officers, you find out so much more about what happened, because you were so focused on doing what you were doing. It's just amazing other things were going on, and other good stories and stuff, and it really makes you feel better about this. So doing this today and talking about this is just one more, like you said, we're looking for that closure.
Do you think you'll get it?
I don't know. Anytime you lose somebody on a mission, it's hard to accept.
Easy enough. How many years in Aurora PD?
13, sir.
13 years. I'm going to ask you the goofy question I asked all the guys. Why did you become a police officer?
Well, it goes back to being in Afghanistan. I just really enjoyed, going after bad guys. I guess I never wanted to be a police officer. I actually, when I was a kid, got in a little bit of trouble. So, nothing too bad, but yeah, I just never had any desire to be a police officer. But when I was in Afghanistan, I really enjoyed, making a difference.
I'm not going to ask you a whole lot of specifics about Afghanistan. I'm not going to ask you a whole lot of specifics about the theater, but do you think that training and things that you saw in Afghanistan prepare you for something that you'll see in the United States like that?
No, I don't think it did. I saw a lot of not great things in Afghanistan. I think it's a question of context, and you don't expect to see those type of things in the United States. So it really kind of threw me off. Yeah, it just wasn't ready for it. Because in Afghanistan, you're ready for it. It's a war zone, but no, I didn't expect that.
You saw war zone type injuries in Aurora, Colorado.
I did.
In a movie theater.
I did.
Weren't ready for that.
I don't think I was. I wasn't just expecting that. It was, as I said, it was just so out of place.
Was there a moment that night where it's like, whoa, this is bad?
Yeah, it was bad when we went in. We stacked up on the door, and the first thing we noticed is there's a rifle laying on the ground, and that was just okay. And then we went in, and it was just carnage. It was just people shot. It was like a horror movie with blood, and Yeah, and then there was, of course, the CS gas that he had filled the air with, and just that loud siren.
You a different person today?
I would say so.
What way?
I'm more mature. Yeah, I would say I'm more appreciative of life. You know, one of the things is you just kind of go through being a police officer and you distance yourself. And you have to, because you won't go to work if you don't. But that was very personal for me.
What was your job that night?
Are you talking overall, or are you talking...
Just when you went in the theater. Once you got in the theater.
Well, first thing we did in the theater was we just looked for the bad guy. And then someone said they had him out back. So I immediately headed that way. And Jason Oviatt and I believe it was Ryan Sweeney had him, or was it Jason? I'm sorry. It's been a while. They had him on the, it was Jason Sweeney, had him on the ground. And I came up and he was laying on the ground. And I immediately took his legs and put him in what's called a figure four. It's for, just a control hold. And just because I had to feel like I was doing something. Yeah.
What did you do after that?
They cuffed him up, and they did a very, very professional job. They cuffed him up, stood him up, walked him away. And I headed back into the theater, and I really didn't know what to do. Because you go in there and you're thinking you're going to go get in a gunfight. You're thinking, and then you don't know. After that, you stand there and you're like, well, I'm not sure how to make myself useful. I'm sorry, I'm rambling a little bit. And then I saw Officer Merrick, John Merrick. He came out with a woman in his hand, and I said, I can do that. So went in and started giving aid to people.
There was a time when I think it was Hawkins said that you guys kind of saw each other after.
Yeah.
And both didn't realize how bloodied you were.
Yeah, there was a lot of blood. I remember taking off my uniform that next morning, and my legs were covered in blood. And my hands I'd washed, but yeah, there was a lot of blood.
You saw some... I asked this when you guys were all together about considering yourself heroes. A lot of people call you heroes, but you're quick to point at other people. Who do you point the finger at when you say that guy's a hero?
Pretty much everybody I work with. I mean, I can name individual actions. You mentioned Mike Hawkins. I mentioned John Merrick, Steve Redfern, Jerry Johnsgard, Brian Butler. I mean, I can give you names of everybody that I saw do individual things, but it wasn't just them. It was everybody that responded.
Proud of them?
Absolutely.
In a way, I bet that a lot of people might not understand.
Yes, sir.
5 years after the fact, what do you want to know? What do you want people to know about the Aurora Police Department and how you guys are all doing?
Well, 5 years after the fact, I would say I think we're doing well. I'm proud to be part of the Aurora Police Department because I think, they gave us the tools to do what we needed to do that night. Maybe I'm getting off topic again. But I would say I'm proud to be a police officer. I'm proud of what we did that night, and I think we're doing okay. I mean, I don't know how all the victims are doing, but I think we as the police are doing okay.
Just okay?
It depends. The day. Yeah. I thought I was doing a lot better before this, so.
Can I call you Mike? Or
Please, yeah.
Mike, how long have you been with the police department for?
I've been a police officer for 23 years.
I'm going to ask you that goofy cop question. Why'd you become a cop?
I became a cop because I just wanted a job that was outside of an office cubicle, and I wanted to interact with people, and it sounds so, it's the very standard answer, but it's true. I wanted to help.
23 years into this?
Yes.
You feel like you've done some good?
Yes, I do.
Let's talk about training before all this. You guys, I mean, you can train for an active shooter situation, and then you go to an active shooter situation, it's probably a little bit different.
I would agree. I think the training helped and provided a foundation, but ultimately there are some things that you are just not, training cannot prepare you for. Yes.
This was one of those nights?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
If I ask you about that, and I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about what happened to you that night, but I do want to ask you about when you first show up, is there a moment of like, this is different, this is serious, this is a lot of victims? Is there a moment that sort of hits you at that point?
Yes, I recall coming into the lot and seeing a wounded man, and it looked like he was going to be fine, that he was stable. A road crew was taking care of him. And I remember a conscious thought, keep moving, because I was hearing radio traffic indicating that shooting was still going on. I encountered a second party outside the theater, hit a little more severely with people telling me, help, help, and making a conscious decision to rip past their grasp and keep going. And then I went into the theater with another officer, and that's when the realization hit me. This is horrid.
Are you thinking that at that moment, or are you just going into police officer mode and trying to detach yourself from the situation that you're sort of witnessing? Because I think for the average person, it's really sort of difficult to contemplate just how difficult that might be.
When I went into the door of the theater, I thought, here comes the gunfight. And when I was at those first few seconds, I realized, oh, the gunfight's over, and I need to switch gears and deal with some very ugly things.
You still think about that day, I bet, every day.
Yes, I do.
Is it hard to shake? Or do you want to shake?
I'm not sure I want to shake it. I think that I have come to a point with it where it is a passing thought. It was a place. To me, it has become a time rather than a place. And it is something you think about every day. Oh, yeah, we were there. We did that. Yes.
What do you think now, 5 years later, then?
Not much differently. That we were there, we did those things, and I've struck a balance between thinking about it every day and moving on with my life.
Can you do that?
Can you do that? Yes, I think you can. I think you need some help, though, and I have sought out that help, and I've also realized how this can affect families and marriages.
There's this idea that you go to an assignment, and this is 5 years ago, and because you guys haven't talked a lot about this publicly, you've talked about it with friends and family, but you have and counselors. You haven't been able to talk about this publicly, that maybe it's forgotten, that you guys have just, they've moved on. You can't move on from that.
You cannot move on from that, no. No. It will always be a part of you, for better, for worse. And I'm trying to look at the for better aspect of it.
But I bet there's been a lot of for worse, too.
There has, certainly.
How difficult is it to talk about this?
It's difficult. It's taking some self-control for me to answer intelligibly and not blubbery.
That wasn't easy, particularly. I bet that was really hard early on.
Early on, in the days after, it was relatively easy, and I would say a month later, I think the shock was wearing off, and it did become more difficult to relate what we saw and what happened.
I could see it on your face. This is hard to talk about.
Yeah.
What should we know?
If it makes sense, I would call that what we saw and did in there a horrible privilege. It was a horrible event, but it was a privilege to serve with men and women of that caliber, and it was horrific, but it was a privilege to be able to help and get it done so effectively.
Think of the guys that were here and think of the other guys that aren't here. So, I mean, I hate to use a cliche at a moment like this, but it's a well-oiled machine. I mean, you guys are kind of doing what you do. How proud are you?
I'm really proud of us, and it was a well-oiled machine, and I'm going to come out and say it. It was by God's grace that it was a well-oiled machine.
What do you mean by that?
I know that God moved in us to work that well together and that quickly and that effectively together. Yes, we had trained for a active shooter event. We had not fully trained for a mass casualty event. We had not trained for what to do when someone's intestines were spilled out. We had not trained for that.
So what do?
You pick them up and you put them back in and you run like hell with them. And I saw that happen. And that female officer is not here to interview about that, but I'm immensely proud to serve with people capable of doing those kind of things.
What are you going to take away from that night besides the negative?
There is some positive to take away. I think that it has at turns made me a kinder, more patient, and gentle man. And it has at turns helped me regain some priorities in my life, what is really important.
What questions should we ask of your partners? What do we need to make sure that we make this story about when we're putting this together?
I'm not sure. I don't know. Like I said earlier, it was pretty emotional for me to recall and remember what these guys were doing.
You were so caught up in that moment that night that it sounds like it took many more hours for you to realize just how bloodied you were.
Yes. Later on in the night, myself and Jimmy Waselko were pulled aside and taken to a room, and I looked at Jimmy, and just the look on his face, he looked shell-shocked, and I looked down at Jimmy's uniform, and it was covered in dried blood. His pants looked like cardboard, and then I had the realization that I looked at my own shirt, and my own shirt looked similarly.
You didn't see it until then?
I did not see it until then, no.
Why not?
No. Just operating in pure survival adrenaline mode would be my best answer to that.
You had one of the worst tasks that night.
I did.
How do you deal with that?
Well, I think for a while that I didn't. I think that I became emotionally detached, and as Lieutenant Redfern discussed earlier, not having a full range of emotions when other bad things would happen to people. And then later on, the emotions did start to hit. There was a period of time where it became kind of like a PTSD experience to carry my daughter upstairs to bed. And like I say, I think it comes back to it was a horrible privilege. Sergeant Johnsgard and Sergeant Butler were aware that Veronica had expired. I was not fully aware of that when they called me over to carry her out. My hands were so tingly and shaky from adrenaline, I could not find her pulse. And Sergeant Johnsgard just said, "Stop it, get her out of here." And I ran out with her, and when I got into the parking lot, I realized that she had expired. And I have since come to view that as a horrible privilege, and I have since been able to speak with her parents regarding that, and it was important to me that they knew that that she was taken out by Daddy, and that I have a daughter that age, and I'm very cognizant of what was lost.
How many kids do you have?
6.
What are their ages?
No, kind of have a used car lot. I've got one of everything. I've got 23 down to 3, and I've got 3 girls and 3 boys.
You're a different father. Yeah, I bet.
Yes, yeah.
It's going to shake. You're just going to be a different person. Overprotective.
At turns, more gentle, more patient. Yes.
You never want to deal with this again.
I do not. Longest 20 minutes of my life.
You guys saved lives that night.
Yes.
Not everything's going to go perfectly.
No.
But there was some good that was done that night, for as hard as it was.
Certainly.
What should be known 5 years after? 5 years after what the Aurora Police Department did that night, what needs to be known? What should be known?
I would say that what I would like people to know, that it was an immediate 100% effort. And it was just an immediate gelling of personalities and ideas and action, and it worked, is what I would like people to know. I credit sergeants and lieutenants and officers for having the wherewithal to know we got to go now. Having the wherewithal to pick up those intestines, put them in, and go.
Your car was at university?
Yes.
Did you transport?
I did.
How many?
I transported 2.
Was Veronica one of them?
No.
So in that picture of the 3 cop cars in University Hospital, is yours one of those?
Yes.
Do you know which one?
I do. Yeah.
Which one?
It's the very old Crown Vic. And yes, I transported people to... when I got across the lot with Veronica and I could tell that she was probably gone, I somehow found an ambulance all by itself, and they had their pram out. I laid her down on the pram, and I could tell by the paramedics' faces it was too late. I was operating on autopilot. After I put Veronica down, I ran back to the theater, and firefighters stopped me and said, "Do you have a car?" And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Bring the car up." And I said, "Okay." And they put Mike White in the car, and the firefighter said to me very quietly, "You need to go like hell. You need to get there fast." And then they slid this young lady, Michaela, in the back seat, and I could tell she had taken a grazing round across her lip, and Mike had been shot in the chest, and I took the firefighter literally. I went like hell because I knew that being hit in the chest was pretty serious.
Where'd you go?
I went to university.
That's right. So did you both times go to university? Or you only
I made one trip with two people.
That's
yeah.
Right. Take 225?
Yes.
Went pretty fast, I bet.
It went pretty fast. I had a very old police car nearing the end of its service life, and it sounded like it was shaking itself apart.
But you got there.
I got there, yeah.
You were for one of the first SWAT officers on the scene?
No, I was a supervisor.
Supervisor. How soon were you there?
Jerry and I got there at the same time because we were having coffee together.
Jerry?
At the Johns Guard, at the Central Shops. So it was kind of one of those that the normal shooting came out, what was then perceived to be the normal shooting at the Aurora Theater.
You're thinking this is like a normal thing?
Oh yeah, it sounded totally like normal until a minute or two later when the updates started. And that's usually what, your average run-of-the-mill shooting incident, you get a call of a shooting or whatever, and then some initial information, and then it's pretty quiet because people are going, and then guys will show up and that kind of a thing, but you don't have a lot of chatter from a dispatcher. And in this particular case, we heard the shooting, but okay, we're just down the street, so if they need us, we can be there pretty quick, and continued on what we're talking or doing or whatever. Then the updates started coming up. Multiple shooters, multiple shots fired, people running out of the theater, this and that. It was like, it turned out it wasn't your run-of-the-mill parking lot altercation type thing. Yeah. So,
did you go into police mode at that point, or what did you do?
Oh, yeah. We looked at each other and went, this is not what we thought it was originally. And so hop in the cars and take off.
What did you see when you got there?
So when I got there, it was pretty much massist area. I mean, even getting into just the parking area was a little challenging. I think there was some road construction at the time, so I actually went through some wet asphalt to get through there. Luckily, I was driving one of the expeditions, so I didn't really care. So you just plow through it and go, and it was congested enough with people that I had to park pretty far away and then run in to get in there, because to try to navigate through the people with that big car, you would have hit somebody or, whatever. It's just totally untenable.
Is there a moment when you can sort of recall vividly now that you just sort of said, okay, this is what we were hearing on the radio. Mm-hmm. This is the real deal.
So when I got there and ditched the car, I started to run towards the entrance that was the closest to me, which I think was the northwest one. And there were people streaming out of it, people streaming out of the front. Somebody had propped open the door with a bench, because usually those are locked, and at the time I didn't know what from was from the tear gas that was kind of permeating the whole building. And so as I'm running towards the door and people are running out, then I'm hollering at them to get out of the way. I've got a gun in my hand, and then as soon as you hit the door front, it's like, okay, all the noise, everything is going on. You're like, all right, here in the next 30, 45 seconds is when I get shot. So here we go.
You thinking that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You're waiting to get shot.
Well, yeah, okay, so I am. For whatever reason that night, I don't have my rifle with me. I've just got my pistol. So you're taking a .45 caliber pistol up against what all the reports are saying is some type of a, rifle-based platform or whatever, and the odds on that are never good for obvious reasons. Your body armor in those types of situations is worthless. So, you run into that going, okay, I'm probably going to get shot, or am I going to die or not? Well, that's a die toss, because most of the time we see lots of people get shot and they don't die. So that's kind
walk
of
me into that mentality, though. I mean, it's that police officer mentality where you're like, okay, this might be the day.
Well,
I get shot.
It's not like it's totally emotionless.
Well, that's what. Tell me what's going through your mind.
You've got adrenaline pumping, and you're breathing hard from running, and your mind's going 100 miles a minute. And right after I had that shot, I actually went. There's another officer, I don't even know who it was, coming in the back door. And, thank God we're both in uniform, because none of the plainclothes guys are there yet, because we're both pointing guns at each other. Pause. Okay. Move on down the row here to where the theaters were. So, I mean, it's kind of a natural, at least to me, it seems like it's a natural assumption when you're going into something like that. And it's not like it's over. A lot of times when you would go to a run-of-the-mill shooting, it's over. Somebody's been shot. Whoever it is has fled in this vehicle or whatever. This is something where as you're running into the building, you're listening to reports of additional shots fired here, additional shots fired there. It sounded on the radio like it was bigger than it was in terms of how many shooters there were, not, the disaster, but in terms of how many people were involved, we didn't know how many. The common perception, at least for me at the time, was definitely more than one person. And so when you have all these people running out and running around and screaming and everything like that, who's the bad guy? You don't necessarily know until you're right up on them, or unless you hear, gunshots or that kind of key you in a certain direction. But so it's pretty chaotic, and I mean those are things that were running through my mind when I went in. But then once we had the oh shoot moment, trying to censor myself there, when two of us cops are pointing guns at each other, thinking we're the bad guy coming in opposite doors, then it's kind of a mental reset. Okay, that's fine. Let's move on in here. And that's when, some of the training and in a large case, I think just experience takes over, and you're like, okay, I've got these tasks that I need to accomplish and go get things taken care of. So,
do you still see that night a lot? I mean, do you think back to that night?
At times I do. I have the luxury that a lot of the other guys don't have of no longer working with Aurora. And so that being the case, I don't see the theater every day. I live 2 states away from here. So that daily input is now gone. So it's kind of more in a memory phase a little bit. There's not a constant reminder of it. However, there are weird things that will pop up, like that fire alarm thing I was talking about earlier. The theater at the time, their emergency alarm system was a really unique sounding one. And honestly, I don't know if I'd heard one or at least paid attention to one that sounded like that before. So now there's certain types of, fire alarms or anything like that. Whenever I'm out and about, if I hear that, that'll snap you right back to that brr, brr type thing it had going on in there. So there's not so much smells because, it was the predominant smell was tear gas for me. And so I don't encounter that hardly ever anymore. So, which is a nice thing. I got plenty of that while I was on duty. It's largely little clips or sounds or stuff like that. Like I said earlier, my wife and I were big movie buffs before all that happened, so we just plowed through and made it continue to happen. So that doesn't, unless there's something that's really, really, really similar, in like a scenario or whatever in a movie or on TV, I don't necessarily think about it that way. I think what prompts it more for me is sometimes the sounds and maybe occasional flash images or talking to people, folks that I keep in touch with back here in Denver.
Some people back here are still struggling a little bit, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
What do you think about that? I mean, it's just this...
Well, it's tough. I mean, I actually consider myself lucky in the situation that I'm in because, again, I'm not drowning in that stuff day in and day out. I remember that I had a couple years I was here after that before I left the department. And, you're you go to court, it's right across the street. You go here, it's right there. You have to go across town to do whatever, it's right there. You can't get away from it. Aurora's not that big. And it's pretty centrally located to where all the, things are that you do in the city, especially as a police officer. So for me, that part's been a nice thing because it's been a complete disconnect. You're in a completely different state. I was a police officer in that state before. I used to work for Kansas City, Missouri PD before I came to Aurora. And so I associate a lot more of those memories on a day-to-day basis. And my old partner still works for KCPD. He's getting ready to retire. And so some of those guys. And so it's almost like two different lives.
So why come here today? Why talk about this?
A number of reasons. I know that for a long time that there's been kind of for lack of a better term, a gag order on talking about this. There's various reasons for that. Some I agree with, some I don't agree with. But I think a lot of people did a lot of good things that need to be acknowledged for that. I think that some people didn't get the credit they deserved out of that, and I know most of them will say, oh no, not me, but I mean, it's something that I looked at and I was disappointed with how things were handled in the aftermath. It's good to just talk about it too. I mean, because with me being out of state, I don't come in and sit down and we go have, a couple beers and everybody talk about this. That's more with the guys that are here every day around each other. I'll have sidebar conversations from time to time with guys like James that I'm pretty tight with, and Jerry and others, but for the most part, I'm kind of, in my particular circumstance, completely separate from it. So for me, it's kind of a nice closure, and for those of us that worked that night, especially the graveyard shift, there was very little closure over the whole incident. We were back to work within 12 hours in some cases. Guys that were deeply affected that night, as a supervisor, I had to decide if they were even, roadworthy to go out and work. Or if they went out and work, I'd have some guys ride with a partner because they didn't want to be by themselves and were still processing what had happened before. So, I think it's nice for everybody to kind of get that closure. And I know at one point during the group interview, Jerry talked about, not even knowing who the people were after the fact. And, I've got this picture I think I told Anastasia about over the phone where I ran into this teenager female who was one that was pretty badly shot up. And I vaguely remember her getting out of the theater, but I couldn't tell you her name. She's a wonderful young lady. I ran into her at the Starbucks right before I left the department, actually. So I've got a picture of her that I keep because that was like a success moment. Okay, here's somebody we actually helped. And because guys go into police work going, I'm going to save the world, I'm going to help people, and then 3 years into police work, you realize that you're a professional referee for 1% of the population, and they don't like you, and they don't want you around, and so this whole helping people thing that you go into this profession with sometimes goes out the window, and you can go 10 years and count on your hand the number of people you've actually helped, especially if you're working high crime areas and stuff like that. I mean, it all gets lost in there. And so that's one of the reasons that I wanted to come be a part of this, is because, this was an event that I think a lot of new people that become police officers think that they're coming to do. This is we're going to help the universe moment, and we're going to help people and be there for people. And this is one of those events where that truly happened.
You look at that group of guys here, and you're damn proud.
Oh, yeah. It's a pleasure to be around them. We have differences, like all individuals, but I look at the blue group, and that's what I can call it. Those guys are all heroes in my mind, every one of them. So,
but of course they'll easily take the title of hero, won't they?
No, none of them will. I mean, we did what they pay us to do. That's how it works.
They pay you to do this, though?
Oh yeah, we get paid like football stars. And no, that's not it. But that's how it works. I mean, this is the oath we took. This is what we do. You become a cop for a reason. This is the reason. Helping people is the primary function. No matter what or how cheesy it may sound, why are you a cop? To help people. So, no, you just put people in jail. Yeah, but there's a whole lot of people you don't ever hear about that I help. So,
that night's pretty transformative, I guess, in a variety of ways, whether it just be sort of personally, emotionally, professionally. What sticks out?
I don't think anybody who responded to that theater in any way, shape, or form walked away the same person. It's impossible. We see trauma, we see heartache, death, destruction on a daily basis. I mean, that's what we do. But the volume of this night was just beyond your senses. It was the biggest scene I'd ever been to. I'd been to multiple scenes before, but I'm thinking this is way out of hand. It's bigger than I can imagine.
This was the highest body count when you combine deaths and injuries of any shooting in the United States up to that point.
Yeah, mass casualty fit this perfectly. I remember hearing the call thinking, shooting at the Aurora Mall, okay, I've been to a number of them, not a big deal, we'll handle it. And then more callers, and then more callers. And I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be bad. Because we do have a mass casualty situation going on. We have an active shooter who is intent on killing people. So we need to be there as quickly as possible. Because our job is basically respond to the sound of gunfire, neutralize that threat. That's what we get paid to do, make it end.
And you neutralize that threat. You're still worried about a second shooter. But then you've got a lot of victims around, just laying around.
Yeah, so you've got everything at once. You've got the tactical aspect of, I was pretty sure we had our shooter. I'm thinking he's it. I instructed one of the officers to ask just to make sure, not that he's going to tell, but still the thought process is any layoff man could take care of us, any secondary device, the vehicles we're standing next to, and now throw in 30, 40, 50 victims coming at you. Yeah, that just increases what's going on.
Is there a moment inside that theater where you sort of stop being a cop for a moment and start being like I can't believe this just happened?
Oh, that's there constantly. I can tell you that during the chaos, when we were getting people out triaging them, probably, 10 or 15 minutes into it, we're taking people out. I'd made a number of trips already, checking on the triage folks at the back door. I went in and the gas hit me again, because every time it's like a new effect for the most part. And I go, I have got to get out of here. I've got to leave. So what I did was I said, I'm going to go prop open the front doors, which was wonderful. I went to the front doors, propped them open, and had maybe a minute of normal quiet, somewhat, because there's officers running all over. But I had about a minute to regroup, get myself back together, and then go back in. So, yeah, that was a human moment. I needed to get out of there. And that's what I got, and it worked out for me. I was able to go back in and continue on doing what I do.
How many hours did you spend in that theater that night?
I was probably in the first 3 guys that arrived, and I left that morning around 7:30. I had officers assigned to the interior of the theater while the bomb squad cleared the exit. I picked 2 guys. I said, "You're in here," and they were in here the whole time. I'd check on them as much as I could. Got yelled at a couple times by the bomb squad guys. Stay away from that area. Okay, I'll be right out of it. I mean, because my thought process was, if there was a bomb, it would have already gone off. So it's just a secondary sweeper, a clearance that, okay, we'll do it, but I'm not real concerned.
How are you different?
I'm sorry?
How are you different?
I think I mentioned earlier, just you tend to take life for granted a lot of times. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and I'd look at it going, call A, call B, call C. This one comes along, and then suddenly, wow, things change that quick. We all know that, but on this biggest scale, you notice it affects you. I hug my grandkids tighter. I respect my family more the time we have. That's really important, because I'm thinking people went to that movie, had no idea that their life was changing forever.
You said earlier, every time you talk about it, it makes it a little better.
It does make it better. There was a time that I couldn't bring it up without stopping or getting emotional. Now I still get emotional. It's there. It's just not as raw. It's not as painful. Like I said, there isn't a day goes by that I don't think about that theater in one way, shape, form, or another, through reminders of driving past the way on the way to work or walking into my district and see Veronica's picture on the wall. That was tough for quite a while. And now it's kind of like, good morning. It's a ritual.
Now, you guys, you've talked about it with, family and friends. Talking about it publicly, is that a little strange, doing this?
Oh, this is totally foreign. But I think this is probably also one of the best things that can happen. There are so many people that still don't talk about it. that still don't release it. It's their private demon, and it haunts them. Whether they admit to it or not, it does. And being able to verbalize it doesn't make it seem so strong or so painful, maybe.
Is this a changed police department because of this?
I can't say we're changed. I think that APD is probably the finest organization out here. Just the training, the people. We're not that giant city that everybody forgets why you're here. We're still in the same boat, and that's to help people. And I think this experience showed that it can happen here. We're not immune from the problems of the big city. What can happen anywhere? So I think we're a better department for it. I think we've learned. I think the people are still around that went through it still pass that on to others, which is good. But I see a lot of new guys come in and have no clue. They'll go, "Oh, so you were at the theater?" "Yeah." "Oh, I was still in high school," which is, I get that a lot anyway. But yeah, so I think it helped the city. Unfortunately, it's not the kind of help that we ever ask for, as far as having an incident make us and shape us. But
you talk about how having that picture of Veronica, you really wanted to make sure that she wasn't just there. Why did you make that decision?
I can tell you that when I came in the back door and someone had carried her down, an officer had carried her down to the front just so they could get to the people who needed assistance up top. I walked in there and she's laying there, and I thought, this child, what the hell is this child doing here? Because I'd been dealing with adults, and it was the first child I saw. I reached down and saw the bullet wound, felt for a pulse. There was none. I could tell she was dead. I've been doing this long enough. And I remember seeing Sergeant Hawkins, officer then, just saying, "Get her out of here. Take her out. Triage her. Get her out of here. She's not staying here."
Why? Why'd you do that?
No child is going to stay in that scene. It was horrific enough without having my officer step over the body of a little girl right at the rear door. That's just not going to happen. Should she have stayed there? Yeah, by protocol, probably, but no.
Why is her picture up?
She wanted to be a police officer apparently, and they had a ceremony and awarded her an honorary police officer. So her picture's up on the wall. I remember the first time I saw it, I'm thinking, "Oh, thank you. I need this." But now it's kind of like a ritual. I say it every morning, so it's not that bad. It helps. So,
Jason, for better or worse, you get a lot of attention.
Yeah.
For what you did initially. Is that odd? Here we are 5 years later, and sort of you're known as the guy that arrested the defendant.
That is very odd, yes. I mean, I think realistically, I was more part of a massive effort to deal with a problem, and I was just one of the people that was on one side of the building.
You've sort of gone over this. I'm not going to have you rehash it, but is it just happened to be there? He happened to be there. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say there was any real strategic plan to go to that side of the building for me. I went to the back of the building because when I was approaching the theater, I was coming down Sable Boulevard, and that's the side that is next to Sable.
Were you surprised as any to learn that that was the shooter?
When I first saw him, I thought he was a cop until I got a little closer to him, and I was... It's one of those things you can't really process quickly, even while on one level I realized that this is a suspect, because at the time we were still thinking that there were multiple shooters. Even at the time where you're thinking this is someone who's involved, there's another part of your brain that's just totally unable to recognize that.
Would you call him cooperative, or what would be the proper term?
I would say he surrendered. Yeah, I would say he surrendered. He gave up.
Do you ever think about why that happened, or are you done thinking about it?
I wouldn't say I'm done thinking about it. I would say that I don't think I'll ever have a good answer, and I don't think wondering what was in his mind is something that's worth losing any more sleep over, you know?
So let's talk about something better. Talk about the work of your colleagues that night. work of you and countless other police officers, when you look back 5 years, what are you left with?
It's I'm really impressed with the people who made the decision to evacuate to the hospital in patrol cars, and I'm really impressed with the people who did that and made multiple trips back and forth. I've spoken with ER doctors who told me that that saved lives. It's easy to destroy things and to destroy people, and that's what he did. And there's lives that will never be the same because of him, but I'm glad that I could be a part of something that minimized his effect, that took away from the damage that he tried to do and the damage that he did.
Do you think there were heroes that night?
I don't really like that word. I think that there were a lot of people that were trying hard to do the right thing, to do the best they could with a horrible situation. I think there were a lot of people doing the best they could, and I think that it went better than we could expect from something like this.
How are you doing?
Mostly pretty good. Every once in a while, when I think about it, sort of go into this dark place for a couple of days, but I think that overall I've been pretty successful in not letting this affect me too much. I think I've done good as far as not letting this take away from things that I enjoyed before that night. Like I was saying earlier, I loved the movies before, I love the movies now. I spent the whole next day talking to my best friend about it, and really getting a lot of the toxicity out early. And so it's always there. You can always go back to it and always remember, sort of always relive it a little bit, but it's not really hanging over my shoulder where I have to all the time,
But it comes up. Probably, maybe it's times when you expect it, and maybe times when you don't.
Yeah, it comes up every year, and it comes up just sometimes,
What's 5 years going to mean then, for you?
5 years isn't going to mean anything that 4 years didn't, or that 6 years won't. It's just going to be. It's just going to be another day, and I'll either think about it or dwell on it for a while, or I'll avoid that.
Is there anger that one individual had this ripple effect for so many people, whether it was the physical injuries of people that you helped that night, and that still seeing colleagues that are still struggling with this?
Yes, I'm. Like I said before, it's easy to destroy things, and it's easy to destroy people. I'm comfortable with that knowledge. What I'm angry about is that somebody chose to for no reason.
You testified at trial.
Several times.
You've not really, besides that, publicly talked about this. Why talk about it? Why feel the need to talk to us, talk to Anastasia?
Because I think that people should have their questions answered. Because I think that I can understand why people might want to know what some of us are thinking and what some of us are feeling, and I guess I'm in a place where I can answer those questions.
There's some people who can't. I have plenty of colleagues I think would. How? I mean, give me an idea. I mean, this is not a broken department by any stretch.
No.
But how much are people still sort of dealing with this in their own ways? Maybe potentially still struggling with this.
I think there's really a broad range as far as that goes. I think that people are in the department are doing well. You know, I don't think that. I don't think that it's had no effect, but I don't think that it's crippled us either. You know, there's a broad range. Some people had a much harder time dealing with it, but there's plenty of people on the department now that weren't even hired yet when it happened, and are hearing about it in the academy from the perspective of someone that wasn't there. So the department's growing, and the department's healing just like the rest of the community.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Active Shooter, the podcast. Remember, if you see something, say something. There's no telling how many lives you may be saving. A big thank you to Darren Curtis, who composed some of the songs on our show. You can find him online at www.darrencurtismusic.com. Make sure to check us out on social media. You can find us on Facebook at Active Shooter, the podcast, and on Twitter at Podcast Active. Thank you, and be safe.